gazed at him as he walked through the halls, unperturbed by the idiots pushing each other into lockers or the gaggles of girls talking gossip nearby. He simply moved fluidly through the chaos, emerging unscathed, not a hair out of place. His hair, as always, was a light brown and long enough to make girls want to run their hands through it. His eyes were a deep green, my favourite colour since I first saw him, and calm as he flowed through the school. I let my mind wander towards his wide chest and further down to his waist. "Katie, you're staring again," my best friend Heather said condescendingly, turned my head slightly towards her while keeping my eyes on him. I know, I can't help it." She pushed my face towards her, forcing me to look her in the eyes. I pouted. "You look desperate when you stare, just so you know." Heather turned to get something from her locker. I leaned against the one beside her and tried to catch a last glimpse of him before he turned the corner. "I can't help it, he's just too much." "If you're so crazy about him, go ask him to the dance tomorrow night. It's girl's choice and he doesn't have a date yet." "Heather, why the hell would Carter ever say yes to me? I'd just make myself look like an idiot. Plus, you know dances and I do not mix well." "You never know till you try, and I'm sure you're not as bad as you used to be." We both exchanged a look. "Okay, well maybe you are still pretty bad, but I still think you should ask him." "And I think that's a terrible idea." She scoffed and shook her head as the 5-minute bell rang. We hugged and both ran off to our respective classes. I knew Heather was right. What was the point of admiring Carter from afar if I can't even talk to him? I just couldn't stand the thought of being rejected by him, so we settled for staring at him across the biology classroom so intently that I missed half the notes we took. One got to biology, my newfound favourite class of the day, just as the final bell rang, and rushed to my seat. I started to get my notebook out when Mr. Tyson made an announcement with his characteristically twangy southern voice. "All right now, hold on everybody. Don't get anything out just yet. You all are going to be moving around in just a second. We're going to be starting a partnered project today. I know it's Friday, but this is just to introduce you all to it, and I give you time next week to work on it with your partners." One nearly groaned with annoyance at the prospect of having to do the work for 2 people, as a lot of people in the class weren't exactly the most work-oriented people in the world. I was already contemplating how to divide the entire project up into sections when Mr. Tyson started listing out the pairs. I barely paid attention when he called my name. "Katie, you'll be working with Carter over there." My heart stopped. I felt it skip at least 3 beats as my mind registered what he said. I had just calmed myself down when Carter dropped his bag beside the seat next to mine and sat down. This did not help my situation at all. "Hey, Katie, right?" His voice sounded as if chocolate could talk. I blanked for a good 3 seconds. Yeah, hi, Carter," Vertical Bar replied in the shakiest voice you could imagine. "This project seems like it's going to be tedious, but we should be able to get it done with the time he gives us." His beautiful eyes looked into mine whenever I had the guts to glance up at him, looking away from my notebook I was pretending to write in. "I think we can, especially since I'll probably get my part done on Saturday and can help next week with the rest." I struggled to get the words out and not stutter like an idiot. "Oh, are you not going to the dance? It's Saturday night, remember?" "I remember, but I just don't feel like going. Dances aren't really my thing." I wasn't lying. Me being within 20 feet of a dance floor was not good. Last time I had danced, I had tripped, fallen, and taken down 2 other people unlucky enough to be nearby. "Oh, come on, I'm sure it'll be fun. I'm just going to watch the awkwardness unfold." He looked me in the eye and I couldn't look away. I was caught in his entrancing gaze. Fine then, but who would I even ask? Most people probably have a date already. Tyler doesn't, neither does Brian or Grant. Them, they'd be too busy pushing other people around to talk. No offence, but they're a bit too immature for my taste. Brian wasn't quite as childish as Tyler and Grant, but I only had eyes for one person in the school, the one I was nervously talking to right now. Well, if worst comes to worst, I don't have a partner still. My heart again felt like it skipped at least 3 beats. Was he leaving the door open to let me ask him out? "I wouldn't be opposed if you wouldn't." Holy shit, I just asked Carter out to a dance and I didn't even stutter. I wouldn't mind it, and he just accepted. I was going to the dance with Carter Drayton. There's no way. I must be dreaming. "When does it start again?" I asked, through the overwhelming urge to hyperventilate and run around the room cheering. "It starts at 7. See you then." "Yeah, I'll meet you at the gym." When the bell rang, I packed up and ran out to my car as fast as possible and screamed when I got into it. I got many dirty looks and people flipping me off as I squealed out of the parking lot and flew down the road to my house. I had to call Heather as soon as I could. "Hello? You'll never guess what just happened." Vertical Bar nearly screamed into the phone. "Whoa there, okay, you might want to step away from the phone if you're going to be assaulting it like that. What's got you in such a tantrum?" "I just asked out, Carter, and he said yes." I held the phone away from my ear as I heard Heather scream louder than I had into her phone. "Oh my God, girl, how did it happen? Tell me everything!" I explained to her what exactly happened over the past couple hours, and she is nearly as excited as I am about the whole situation. We decided that she'd come over early Saturday morning and we could help each other get ready for the dance together. Really, she'd be helping me mostly since I hadn't planned on going to the dance. Later that night, I laid wide awake, thinking of Carter and all the things I wish he could do to me. A wet spot grew between my thighs, along with a heat that screamed to be cooled. I grabbed a towel with a shaky hand and laid it on top of my sheets and slid my hand down my stomach slowly, imagining it were Carter's tongue, or his fingers caressing my body as he made my mind numb with pleasure. My fingers traced a circle around my pussy, teasing it further and making me whimper in anticipation. They glided over my clit, just as Carter's tongue would. I nearly moaned at the thought of him touching me in that way. My finger dipped into myself, and I felt myself tense up at the newfound pleasure. I moaned as I imagined grinding on his finger or dick like that. My middle finger was soon joined by my ring finger, as I established a steady rhythm and let my head's version of Carter take care of the rest. I moaned his name and imagined him calling me his bitch and degrading me like his own property. I was a soaked mess and came in minutes. I cleaned the moisture off of my thighs and laid down to go to bed. Still buzzing with pleasure and thinking of Carter, I drifted off to sleep. One woke up the next morning to a call from Heather, asking when to come over to prep for the dance. I told her around 11 would be fine, as the dance started at 7. My mind raced between thoughts of what I needed to do when I needed to leave to get there on time. Carter, what my makeup should look like, Carter in a tux, what my hair needed to look like, Carter holding my hand, what pictures needed to be taken, Carter and I dancing like I knew I couldn't dance. It was difficult to remain focused. At 6:30, Heather and I left, after taking the appropriate pictures and preparing as much as we could. We arrived at the front entrance at about 7:05, and there was a long line of people waiting outside of the door, waiting to get in, as teachers and staff slowly checked everyone in. Heather quickly ran off to find her date after giving me a quick hug and words of encouragement. I got in line and about 5 minutes later finally got to the front and approached the math teacher checking people in at this particular table. "Last name?" "Lassiter." "Katie?" "Yep, that's me." "All right, you can go, have fun and do some dancing." "Yeah, right, with my 2 left feet." I wanted to laugh, but didn't want to look crazy in front of the line. I walked through the makeshift arch placed in front of the door and looked around. It was dark. Most of the lights were off except for some party lights strewn about the commons. I could hear muffled dance music from inside of the gym, the thumping rhythm shaking my body. "Hey, Katie." My heart skipped a beat as I heard Carter's silk-smooth voice. I looked to my right and saw him leaning against a wall, dressed in a black tuxedo. Even in the darkness of the commons, I could see his eyes, coolly looking into mine. "Hey, sorry I'm late. The line was super long." My voice was slightly shaky with nerves as I thought of what was happening. "Hey, sorry I'm late. The line was super long." My voice was slightly shaky with nerves as I thought of what was happening. "Yeah, I think they could have probably gotten some faster people to check people in, but what are you going to do?" He walked over to me with a smooth, fluid stroll, and we were less than 3 feet apart. "You look gorgeous, Katie. I love your dress." His eyes left mine as he looked at me. I thought I saw a slight hunger in his eyes for a second, but they returned to normal quickly. "Thanks, you do too. You look amazing in a tuxedo." My eyes scoured his body, taking in every detail. I realised I was staring and hadn't said anything for a minute and looked away. "You okay? You seem like you're shaking," Carter asked with true concern on his face. Yeah, I'm fine. It's just a bit cold out there." Vertical Bar lied. "Here, let's move into the gym. It's probably warmer in there." He put his arm around my waist, my breath caught in my throat and led me into the gym, where the dance music became much louder. There were young couples throughout the gym standing around awkwardly, some dancing on the floor, mostly in groups of 6 or more. "Thank you, this is warmer." Vertical Bar nervously dug in a bit closer to him, not sure how he'd react. Of course, I couldn't have my date getting cold. I fought the urge to bite my lip when he said my date the way he did, my mind going to the worst places immediately. "Care to dance?" Carter asked, snapping me out of my trance. A slow song had came on, and couples were pairing up on the dance floor. Oh no, I couldn't. I can't dance at all. Come on, it's easy. The lead does most of the work anyway. He slipped my hand into his and started to lead me to the dance floor, looking into my face for an answer before he continued. "Are you sure? I don't want to step on your feet or fall." "I promise I won't let you fall, and don't worry about it." "You'll be okay, I've got you." He led me onto the floor and pulled me closer, wrapping his arms around me, just swaying to the music. I wrapped my arms around his neck and stared up at his face, feeling like we were the only 2 people in existence. He looked back down at me and smiled. I felt my face flush and looked away. He chuckled and moved his hand to gently lift my face back up to look at him. My heart pounded harder than if I had just sprinted 5 miles. "Don't worry, I'm not going to bite." He chuckled and brought my lips to his. My eyes widened and then closed as I got into the kiss, which lasted for much less time than it should have. Carter slowly pulling away and smiling as I stared into his eyes, no doubt looking like a cherry. "We should probably get off of the floor, Katie." Vertical Bar looked at my surroundings for the first time in what felt like a century and realised the normal groups had reformed as the song changed, going back to the more high-energy songs playing when we entered the gym. I removed my arms from his neck and he led me off the dance floor and out of the gym. "Would you like to go someplace more private?" The way he said it made my skin tingle as I took in the second meaning of his words. "Yes, absolutely." My mind raced as I pinched myself, wondering if I had died and gone to heaven. We walked down the hall looking for an empty classroom. We saw many kids who probably had the same idea we did, but no teachers, thank God. We finally found an unoccupied classroom, and Carter closed the door behind us. I sat nervously on a desk, not sure how to act or what to say. Carter brushed my hair out of my face with his hand, caressing it and bending down to kiss me again. This time we kissed for a long time, Carter lightly pushing my head against his, taking off his jacket with his other hand. I got lost in the feeling of his lips against mine, my head swimming in surprise and excitement and nerves. I ran my fingers through his hair, feeling myself getting wetter by the second. I started to slip the straps of my dress off, but Carter, now shirtless, stopped me and pulled me to my feet and broke the kiss. I looked at his wide, bare chest and nearly drooled. He wasn't absolutely shredded, but he had an outlined 6-pack. "Here, let me," he whispered and started to slip the dress off of me. I blushed as it fell to the floor. I stood there in my underwear, shrinking in on myself, as I braced for his laugh or his look of disgust. When I looked up, I saw and heard neither. I saw adoration and that same hunger I saw earlier in his eyes. His eyes raked my body and he pulled me in for another kiss. "You're more beautiful than I could have imagined," he said through kiss after kiss. He sat down on the desk and pulled me onto him. I felt his hardness as I straddled his waist and grinded into it with my soaked panties, making his pants wet. I backed off of him and flushed as he looked at me with that hunger. I knelt down and unbuttoned his pants, feeling his bulge as I did so. I took his pants off and pulled back the waist of his boxers. I nearly drooled on his dick when it sprung out. It must have been 6 inches or more. It looked huge to my virgin eyes. "Can I please suck it?" I pleaded, sounding like something straight out of my fantasies. He chuckled and put his hand in my hair, guiding my mouth to his dick. I had never given an actual blowjob before, and didn't know what to expect. The taste of his pre-cum hit my tongue, and I was overwhelmed by the saltiness of it, but after a second it tasted good. His dick filled my mouth quickly, even when not all of it was in my mouth. I was thankful I'd practiced with my dildo. Otherwise I would have choked immediately, but after a second I got used to the way it hit the back of my throat. I swirled my tongue around the tip as I sucked on it, lightly bobbing my head up and down on his dick, making him groan softly and grab my hair rougher. I got wetter as he pulled my hair and slipped a finger into my panties, playing with myself as I sucked him off. I moaned as I circled my clit with my finger, sucking harder on his dick, feeling it hit the back of my throat with every bob of my head. I took my mouth off of it with *, pop *, and licked from the bottom of the shaft to the tip, swirling my tongue around the head. "Am I doing good?" I asked in a shaky and whimpery voice, my fingers still softly penetrating my pussy. "Oh my God, yes, you're doing amazing, Katie. Where did you learn to do that?" he panted, a look of hunger and desperation in his perfect eyes. I smiled and kissed the head of his dick again. I watched a few videos on the internet. "Oh yeah, I have too. Care to see if they were as helpful as yours?" He pulled me to my feet and pulled off my underwear and bra, leaving me fully naked at last. I again nervously tried to cover up, but he lightly grabbed my hand and pulled it away, pecking me on the lips as he sat me on the table. "You look beautiful, Katie." He kissed my lips, then my cheek, then my neck, moving down my body, paying special attention to my tits, and slowly moving to my thighs. He used his tongue to trace circles on the sensitive parts of the inside of my thigh. Making me twitch and moan softly, he inserted one of his fingers into my vagina, softly and slowly, letting me feel as he slid into me. I felt myself tighten around his finger, my mind screaming, "Oh my God, Carter's inside me." Vertical Bar moaned as he put his tongue on my clit, lightly pressing with his wet tongue, circling it, playing with it, and slowly thrusting in and out with his fingers, as now 2 of them were inside of me. I grabbed the edges of the table with my hands so hard my knuckles were white. I saw him smirk as I did this, and he started to thrust harder with his fingers and started licking my clit more roughly. I moaned again and covered my mouth to keep quiet, not wanting to get us caught. He reached up with his other hand and groped my tits. I felt like I was in heaven. Wave after wave of pleasure rocked my body and brain. My eyes rolled back into my head and I nearly screamed as I came, only 5 minutes after he had started eating me out. He slowed down his thrusts and licks as I came down from the most intense orgasm of my life, panting into my hand and whimpering in pleasure. "I guess my videos were pretty helpful too. You seem like you had fun." Carter smirked. I tried to hide the blush in my face and get control of my breathing. "Maybe." He smiled and sat back down on the table and kissed me again. He pulled a condom out of his pants pocket and put it on, looking at me for confirmation. His eyes were beautiful, searching my face for any sign of doubt. "You do want to do this, right?" Carter asked, again looking genuinely concerned for me. I nodded vigorously as I struggled to keep my eyes off his dick, thinking of the way his dick and pre-cum tasted on my tongue, nearly drooling from the thought of it. He laid me back on the table and kissed me, lining his dick up with my entrance, waiting hungrily for its next climax. He rubbed the head of it against my vagina, lightly spreading the lips and preparing me for its penetration. I lightly moaned under my breath as I felt the stimulation, grabbing Carter tightly, feeling him push into me. I heard Carter groan as he entered me, slowly pushing his full length inside of me. We kissed and he started slowly thrusting in and out of me. "Am I hurting you?" Carter asked, that look of concern again filling his face. "A little, but in a good way. Please go faster," I said, whimpering in pleasure. He sped up his thrusts and started kissing my neck. The increased pleasure made me very nearly moan again, and I had to bite my lip to keep from alerting anyone on the hall to what we were doing. I dug my fingers into his back, but he just kept going, even speeding up again. I felt myself near climax again and whispered in his ear, "I'm gonna come again." He smiled and kissed my neck again, keeping a steady rhythm. I bit my lip as I came even harder than last time, tightening around his dick and grabbing him tighter with my arms. He slowed down and looked at me again, smirking at my blushing and pleasure-filled face. He pulled out of me and looked at me smugly. I kissed his lips and pushed him lightly so he would sit back on the table, letting me sit up. "Think it's your turn to come." I pushed him back and straddled him, leaning forward and rubbing my pussy on his cock. "Would you like that?" He looked at me, a ravenous look in his eyes. In place of a confirmation, he kissed me and grabbed my hips, grinding me on his dick harder. I sat up, lifted my hips and lined him up with my entrance, and slowly lowered myself onto his cock. I moaned as I felt him fill me more completely than before, every inch feeling longer than the last. When I reached the bottom of his shaft, he started softly rubbing my clit. I felt myself tighten on his dick as he did that, and started bouncing, slowly at first but speeding up as I got more used to the new position. As I sped up, my tits started to jiggle. I barely noticed, but Carter seemed entranced by them, reaching up and fondling them softly but roughly enough that it made me moan a little louder, still trying to be quiet. I noticed Carter's face was getting redder and more strained, so I half-whispered, half-moaned in his ear as I bounced. "Are you going to come? Do you want to spill your hot cum inside my mouth?" He nodded. One quickly jumped off of him and ripped the condom off of his dick, sticking his dick in my mouth and sucking, bobbing my head and stroking it at the same time. Then Carter did the thing I'd wanted him to do since I'd first fantasized about him. He grabbed my head, pushed my head down on his cock, and came down my throat. I felt his warm fluid fill my mouth. The taste was similar to his pre-cum, but saltier. I loved it. My eyes rolled back in my head and I moaned as he shot rope after rope into my stomach. After he finished, I kept stroking and softly sucking. I slowly lifted my head off with another asterisk pop asterisk sound. I licked the rest of Carter's cum off of his cock, making him twitch as I tasted his still sensitive dick. After swallowing the rest of it, I scooted up to lay next to him and kissed his cheek. Still panting, he looked at me and petted my hair. "You've got no idea how long I've wanted you to do that to me," I said, running my fingers up and down his chest. "You've got no idea how long I've wanted to do that to you," Carter replied with a smile. I blushed and put my head closer to his in embarrassment. I kissed his cheek again and sat up. "I guess we better get back to the dance. It's probably about to end." Vertical Bar kissed his softening dick one more time and walked over to put on my underwear and bra back on. I walked back over and handed Carter his boxers reluctantly, clenching onto them slightly. He smiled, gave them back to me. "Just give them back when we see each other next time, okay?" Thank you, wait, next time." "Yeah, you really think after you gave me the best night I've had in a while, not to mention one of the best blowjobs I've had, that I wouldn't at least ask for your number to plan another date?" Carter chuckled as he put his pants back on, no underwear. "Well, I didn't know if this was a one-time thing, of course. I'd love to do this again." My night kept getting better. We redressed and walked back to the dance floor, hair dishevelled and clothes more wrinkled than they had been. We danced to the closing slow song the same way as before, but a bit closer to each other. I waved bye to Heather as Carter and I walked to his car, hand in hand. I gave him my address and number while he drove me home. When I went to get out, he pulled me back in for one last kiss. Gazed at him as he walked through the halls, unperturbed by the idiots pushing each other into lockers or the gaggles of girls talking gossip nearby. He simply moved fluidly through the chaos, emerging unscathed, not a hair out of place. His hair, as always, was a light brown and long enough to make girls want to run their hands through it. His eyes were a deep green, my favourite colour since I first saw him, and calm as he flowed through the school. I let my mind wander towards his wide chest and further down to his waist. "Katie, you're staring again," my best friend Heather said condescendingly, turned my head slightly towards her while keeping my eyes on him. I know, I can't help it." She pushed my face towards her, forcing me to look her in the eyes. I pouted. "You look desperate when you stare, just so you know." Heather turned to get something from her locker. I leaned against the one beside her and tried to catch a last glimpse of him before he turned the corner. "I can't help it, he's just too much." "If you're so crazy about him, go ask him to the dance tomorrow night. It's girl's choice and he doesn't have a date yet." "Heather, why the hell would Carter ever say yes to me? I'd just make myself look like an idiot. Plus, you know dances and I do not mix well." "You never know till you try, and I'm sure you're not as bad as you used to be." We both exchanged a look. "Okay, well maybe you are still pretty bad, but I still think you should ask him." "And I think that's a terrible idea.